License and registration, now, and keep both hands where I can see them.
The wipers beat a steady, useless rhythm against the downpour. Malcolm's hands, steady on the wheel, betrayed only by a slight tightness in the knuckles, guided his sedan through the affluent, tree-lined streets of Crestwood Heights. He'd just dropped off a finalized consultancy report. The client, a non-profit, was pleased. The drive back to his apartment in the city was usually 40 minutes of podcasts and decompression. Tonight, it was a tunnel of rain. The police cruiser appeared behind him, a silent ghost before its lights ignited, cutting through the gloom. No siren, just that insistent, colorful command. Malcolm's eyes flicked to the speedometer. 5 under the limit. He signaled, pulled over onto the wide, manicured shoulder, the tires crunching on wet gravel. He took a slow breath, the one he'd been taught since he was 16. Be calm, be clear, hands visible. The officer's approach was not a walk, it was a prowl. A heavy flashlight beam danced over the interior, lingering on the back seat, the passenger footwell, before finally settling on Malcolm's face, making him wince. The tap on the window was not a request. Officer Bryson's face under the dripping brim of his hat was a study in neutral hostility. Mid-40s, with a jaw set like concrete. His eyes didn't meet Malcolm's. They scanned him, the car, an inventory of threat. License and registration, now, and keep both hands where I can see them. Malcolm moved slowly, deliberately. Sir, may I ask why I was stopped? The officer's gaze snapped to his, a flicker of annoyance, as if the question itself was an act of defiance. Did I ask you to talk? The documents, now! The air in the car thickened. Malcolm reached for the glove compartment, popped it, extracted the registration. Then, from his wallet, he removed his driver's license. He handed both through the window. The officer took them without a word, his leather-gloved fingers brushing Malcolm's palm. Bryson studied the license under his flashlight. Malcolm Thorne, this your current address? The question was a trap laid on well-trodden ground. Yes, officer. Long way from home, aren't you? Bryson said, his voice dripping with a knowing implication. Crestwood Heights was not a neighborhood where Malcolm, according to Bryson's silent assessment, belonged. I had a business meeting, officer. Business, Bryson repeated the word as if it were in a foreign language. He shone the light back into the car, over Malcolm's crisp dress shirt, the leather satchel on the passenger seat. What kind of business happens this late? Malcolm kept his voice even. Consulting, international policy. A snort, almost silent. Bryson handed back the registration, but held on to the driver's license. Step out of the vehicle, Mr. Thorne. The rain was cold. It soaked through Malcolm's shirt in seconds. He stood beside his car, the cruiser's headlights turning the falling rain into spears of light. Bryson stood close, too close, a tactic of physical intimidation. You fit a description, Bryson said, his eyes narrow. A description of what? Don't get smart. Turn around, place your hands on the roof. The cold metal of the car seeped into Malcolm's palms. He spread his feet. The path down was thorough, invasive, a performance of power. Finding nothing, Bryson stepped back, but the atmosphere didn't ease. He held up Malcolm's driver's license between his thumb and forefinger, like a piece of contaminated evidence. You know, Bryson said, his voice dropping to a conversational, venomous tone, I've seen a lot of fakes, really good ones, but they always slip up. The laminate, the hologram. He flexed the plastic card. This feels cheap. Malcolm's blood ran colder than the rain. It's not fake. It's issued by the state. See, that's what they all say. Bryson's smile was thin, devoid of warmth. A guy like you, in a neighborhood like this, late at night, doesn't add up to international policy consultant. Adds up to someone casing houses, or here for a transaction. He nodded, convincing himself. Yeah, I think this is a forgery. A good one, but a forgery. Officer, you can run it. It'll come back valid. Please. I'll be the judge of what's valid on my beat. And then, with a calm, deliberate cruelty, Officer Bryson brought his other hand up. He took a firm grip of the plastic driver's license and slowly, cleanly, tore it in half. The sound was a small, sharp crack in the rainy night. It wasn't loud, but to Malcolm it was the sound of a door slamming shut on due process, on dignity, on the fragile contract of citizenship. He stared, disbelief momentarily freezing him, at the two pieces in Bryson's gloved hand. "Now," Bryson said, a note of triumph in his voice, "no valid ID. That's an offense. We're gonna take a ride downtown, sort this out. Turn around, hands behind your back." This was the precipice, the moment where fear could curdle into panic, where injustice could spark a chain reaction with unknowable ends. But Malcolm Thorne was a man who prepared for contingencies. The torn license was a provocation, a symbol of Bryson's absolute, unassailable power in this isolated, rain-swept pocket of the world. As Bryson reached for his cuffs, Malcolm spoke, his voice suddenly different, not louder, but layered with a calm, formal authority that cut through the patter of rain. "Before you proceed any further, officer, I must advise you that you have just destroyed a secondary form of identification. My primary diplomatic credentials are in my inside jacket pocket. I am a senior liaison officer for the permanent mission of the Republic of Azuria to the United Nations. I suggest you contact your watch commander immediately." The silence that followed was profound. The only sound was the rain on the asphalt and the idle sputter of the cruiser's engine. Bryson's hand, halfway to his belt, stopped. The smug certainty on his face fractured, replaced by a slow dawning confusion that quickly eroded into something paler, something like dread. "What?" The word was a puff of air. "My diplomatic ID," Malcolm repeated, each syllable precise, "in my left breast pocket. You have, by destroying my license and attempting a detention without probable cause, complicated this situation considerably. Your commander, now." Malcolm didn't move. He simply stood in the rain, allowing the weight of his words to settle. The power dynamic, so concrete a moment ago, began to liquefy and flow in a new, terrifying direction. Bryson, his face ashen under the flashing lights, stammered a command for Malcolm to stay put and stumbled back to his cruiser. His walk was no longer a prowl, it was a retreat. Through the rain-streaked window, Malcolm could see him hunched over his radio, speaking urgently, one hand pressed to his forehead. The next 20 minutes unfolded like a slow-motion tableau. Another cruiser arrived, then an unmarked sedan. A serious-looking lieutenant in a raincoat spoke first with a visibly shaken Bryson, then approached Malcolm. His demeanor was night and day from Bryson's, cautious, professional, etched with profound apology. "Mr. Thorne, on behalf of the Crestwood Police Department, I offer my deepest apologies for this profound error in judgment and conduct." The words were practiced, but the anxiety behind them was real. Malcolm, now holding a small dark blue folder with a golden embossed emblem, was calm. He was in his element now, the realm of protocol, consequence, and measured response. He explained, clearly and without rancor, the sequence of events: the unlawful stop, the baseless accusation, the deliberate destruction of his property, the threatened unlawful detention. He presented his diplomatic ID, its legitimacy undeniable. The lieutenant listened, his expression growing graver with each detail. He looked over at Bryson, who stood isolated by his own cruiser, staring at the ground, a man watching his career, his standing, his very identity as an authority figure dissolve in the cold rain. The next 20 minutes unfolded like a slow-motion tableau. Another cruiser arrived, then an unmarked sedan. A serious-looking lieutenant in a raincoat spoke first with a visibly shaken Bryson, then approached Malcolm. His demeanor was night and day from Bryson's, cautious, professional, etched with profound apology. "Mr. Thorne, on behalf of the Crestwood Police Department, I offer my deepest apologies for this profound error in judgment and conduct." The words were practiced, but the anxiety behind them was real. Malcolm, now holding a small dark blue folder with a golden embossed emblem, was calm. He was in his element now, the realm of protocol, consequence, and measured response. He explained, clearly and without rancor, the sequence of events: the unlawful stop, the baseless accusation, the deliberate destruction of his property, the threatened unlawful detention. He presented his diplomatic ID, its legitimacy undeniable. The lieutenant listened, his expression growing graver with each detail. He looked over at Bryson, who stood isolated by his own cruiser, staring at the ground, a man watching his career, his standing, his very identity as an authority figure dissolve in the cold rain. The rain finally began to ease. The story wouldn't make the news, no viral video, no public outcry. But in the quiet corridors of power and the hushed, tense briefing rooms of a police department, accountability would be exacted with bureaucratic precision. And somewhere, in a silent house, a man who thought his badge made him untouchable would stare at his living room wall, beginning to understand the true cost of the license he had torn.